The park was quiet, like always. The wind moved slowly through the trees, leaves danced in the air and birds flew far above. It was a normal evening, but not for David. Every day after work, David came to this park. He sat on the same old bench, drank his coffee and watched the world. But for the past 10 days, something was different. Someone was always there before him, a little girl. She never spoke. She never laughed. She never even smiled. She only sat on the bench across from him, still, silent, like a statue. She had pale white skin, silver eyes, and long black hair that fell over her small face. She wore the same gray dress every day, and no one ever came to pick her up. David had watched her from a distance. He had tried to ignore the strange feeling in his chest, the feeling that something was wrong. She was too young to be alone, too still to be normal. He asked people around the park. A few said they had seen her too, but no one knew her name. Some said she was part of a secret project. Others whispered that she was not even human. David didn't believe in stories like that. He was a simple man, a teacher. But still, something about the girl stayed in his mind, even after he left the park. On the 11th day, David made a decision. He walked slowly toward the girl and sat on the bench beside her. She didn't look at him. She just stared at the grass. "Hi," he said gently. "Are you okay?" No answer. "My name is David. I come here every day. I've seen you. What's your name?" Still, no answer. She didn't even blink. David looked at her small hands. They were cold and shaking slightly. He removed his jacket and placed it on her shoulders. For a moment she moved, only a little, and looked up. That's when he saw her eyes. They were not just silver, they were glowing. Softly, like a quiet moonlight inside her. And suddenly, David heard a voice, not out loud, but inside his head. "Don't try to fix what is not yours." He jumped, looked around. The girl hadn't moved. No one was there. Or so, he thought. Behind the trees, a woman stepped out, tall, dressed in black. Her skin was also pale, but her eyes were blue, glowing just like the girl's. David stood up. Quickly, "Is she your daughter?" The woman nodded. "Yes, and you must leave her alone." David tried to speak, but she raised her hand. "You don't understand what she is." "Then help me understand," he said. The woman looked at her daughter. Her voice became soft. "She used to laugh. Before the crash, before this world." David blinked. "Crash?" The woman closed her eyes. "This planet is not our home. We came here by mistake." She lost her smile the day we arrived. David couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You're saying you're not from Earth?" The woman didn't answer. Instead, she held her daughter's hand. "She feels too much now, and yet not enough." Before David could say another word, the air around them shimmered. The space near the bench bent like heat rising from a fire. And then, in one bright flash, the woman and the girl disappeared. Gone. David looked around. The bench was empty. The park was silent again, but something remained. On the ground, where the girl had sat, there was a small object, like a stone but glowing with a soft light. It had strange symbols on it, not any language David had ever seen. He picked it up carefully. It pulsed in his hand, warm, alive, and almost breathing. He held it close to his ear. And then, once again, he heard the voice inside his head. "Help her remember." David stood frozen. Who was she? What happened to her smile? Why was he the one hearing this? He looked up at the stars. They were brighter tonight. Colder too, and somewhere far beyond the sky, David knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The night was long. David could not sleep. The strange glowing stone lay on his table. It blinked softly, like a heartbeat. Every time he looked away, he felt it calling him, "Help her remember." Those words kept repeating in his head like an echo from another world. He had questions, too many. Who were they? Why was the girl so silent? And why did the mother say she used to laugh? David turned on his old laptop and started searching. He typed, "glowing symbols, stone language, alien crash." Thousands of results appeared. Most were useless science fiction blogs, fake alien stories, conspiracy theories. But then something strange popped up, a news report from 2 years ago. Unidentified object falls in northern forest. No survivors found. The photo showed a dark forest with broken trees. No fire, no wreckage. Just a deep hole in the ground, glowing faintly. Location: only 12 miles from David's town. His heart raced. Could that be their crash? Far away, in a hidden cave under the same forest, the woman stood alone. She was not born on Earth. Her name was Marine, and she came from a dying world called Valara. On Valara, there were no emotions. No joy, no sorrow, no anger, just silence. Their minds were sharp, their technology powerful, but their hearts were empty. They had forgotten how to feel. Marine was a scientist there, a seeker. She wanted more. She believed something was missing from their existence. So she left. With her small daughter, Leary, only 6 years old in human years. Their ship was not meant for long travel. It was made for watching, not landing, but something went wrong. They fell. Crashed. The impact broke more than metal. It broke Leary's mind. Since that day, Leary had not smiled once, not even when Marine sang the songs from their home planet, not even when she showed her the shining blue crystals of Earth. Her daughter's face had become blank, like the cold sky of Valara. Marine had come to this planet in search of emotion. But instead, she had found loss, and now, a human had found them. Back in his apartment, David couldn't stop thinking about the girl. Her eyes had spoken louder than any words. He remembered how cold her hands were, how her silence was heavy like pain. He looked at the glowing stone again. It was no longer blinking. Now it was showing something. A soft image appeared in the air, a memory. David saw the mother and daughter, standing in a glowing white room. The little girl was laughing. Her smile lit up the room like a sun. Then darkness, the ship shaking, the crash. Then the silence. The image faded. David stepped back, breathing fast. That was no dream. That was real. He held the stone tightly. "If you can hear me," he whispered, "I want to help her. I will help her." Suddenly the stone pulsed, strong and bright. Like it understood. The next morning, David returned to the park. He waited. Hours passed. No sign of the girl, no sign of the mother. Just wind, trees, and silence. But just as the sun began to set, a shimmer appeared near the trees, like heat waves rising from the ground, and then they were there. The girl, still quiet, still pale, and the mother, watching him with calm, glowing eyes. David stood up slowly. "I don't want to hurt her, I only want to understand." The mother looked at him for a long time, then she spoke. "She is forgetting everything. Our language, our songs, even my voice." David looked at the child. She was holding something, a small toy rabbit. It looked human, old, dirty, but she held it tightly. "She doesn't belong to your world anymore," Marine said. "But she no longer fits in mine either." David stepped closer. Maybe she needs something new." Marine looked at him, puzzled. "New? A new world? A new feeling? A reason to smile?" For the first time, the mother's face softened. "I have tried everything," she said. "Stories, songs, light, even memory links. But joy cannot be forced." David looked at the girl and gently sat beside her. He didn't speak. He just smiled, warm, kind, and real. The girl blinked. She didn't smile back, but her fingers moved slightly, brushing the toy's ear. A whisper, soft and broken, came from her lips. "Happy?" Marine gasped. Her eyes widened. "She spoke," she said, tears forming in her glowing eyes. "She hasn't spoken in weeks." David smiled wider. "I think she's listening now." That night, the stone glowed again. This time, it showed one word in English: begin. David had met many children in his life. He was a teacher, after all. But never had he seen a child like Leary. She was quiet, not just in sound, but in soul. Her silence was not peaceful. It was heavy, like a door locked from the inside. After her first whispered word, "Happy?" David felt something shift. A crack had opened in her mind. And maybe in her heart. Now he had to step through it. The next morning, David brought something to the park. A small box filled with simple things. A music box, some crayons, a soft feather, and a mirror. Marine, the alien mother, stood nearby. Watching closely but silently, David sat on the grass, opened the box, and placed the items in front of Leary. "These are memories," he said gently. "Not yours, mine?" Leary looked at them without blinking. David picked up the feather. "This is from a bird my wife loved. She used to laugh when it tickled her face." He touched it to Leary's hand. She flinched, just a little, then David wound up the music box. A soft tune filled the air, light, playful, almost like a lullaby from a dream. Leary tilted her head. "She used to dance to this," David whispered. "My wife," she said. It made her feel like she was floating. Leary's fingers twitched. She reached toward the mirror. Her reflection stared back, unfamiliar. Pale, glowing eyes and soft silver skin. She touched the glass gently. Then suddenly, her body stiffened, her eyes widened. She froze. David leaned forward. "Leary, are you okay?" But her eyes were no longer looking at the mirror. They were looking inside. In her mind, the door had opened. David felt it before he understood it. A sharp flash of light passed through his head, like a dream being forced into his skull, and then he was inside her memories, but they weren't only hers. They were pieces, fragments, shards of other minds, other lives. He stood in a white field, not grass, but glowing light with tall crystal trees and no sound at all. Then the sky broke apart like glass, and he saw a city with no voices, no movement, people walking without talking, smiling without meaning. He saw Leary standing in a room, surrounded by machines. They'd played sounds of laughter, images of human joy, artificial emotions. And she just stared, confused. She wasn't born broken. She was taught emotions like a lesson, not felt like a child. And then the crash, pain, screams, darkness, her mother crying, holding her small body as their ship sank into the earth's soil. The last thing she felt was fear. David stumbled back out of the memory. His heart pounded. His hands were shaking. He looked at Leary. She was sitting still, but her eyes were wet. Her tiny hands were clenched tightly. She had felt what he saw, and maybe more. Marine stepped forward. "She doesn't know which memories are real anymore," she said. "Our people can share thoughts, but not emotion. Not the way humans can." David breathed heavily. "She has echoes of others inside her. Artificial happiness, fake love, nothing real." Marine nodded. "That's why I brought her here. Your kind still knows how to feel without being told how." David knelt in front of Leary. He took her hand, gently, slowly. "This is real," he said. "Me. You, right now." She looked up at him. And then, for a second, her lips moved, not a smile. "Not yet." But something almost like it. Her hand touched his chest, just over his heart. She said one word, "warm." David closed his eyes. "Yes," he whispered. "That's love." That night, David sat alone in his room, holding the glowing alien. Stone. It was different now. The symbols on it had changed. They were smoother, calmer, and this time the message wasn't just a whisper in his head. It was a sentence, clear and gentle. Memory is not feeling, but feeling can become memory. He understood now. Leary didn't need to remember happiness. She needed to feel it for the first time. Real joy, real connection, and maybe, just maybe, she could build her own memories. With him, back in the forest cave, Marine watched her. Daughter sleep. She had seen a change, a spark, a softness in her small face, not yet a smile, but no longer empty. She touched the wall of the cave, where ancient symbols glowed, their history, their laws, their pride, but none of it had saved her daughter. Only a human had done that. Maybe, Marine thought. Love was not a weakness after all. The sun peeked through the clouds as David walked toward the old school playground. It was quiet, covered in fallen leaves and full of forgotten laughter. Once, children ran here. Swings creaked with joy. Tiny feet danced across the wooden bridge. That was long ago, before silence replaced sound. Today, David had brought Leary. Here, she walked slowly beside him, her small hands tucked into the sleeves of her borrowed sweater. Her silver eyes scanned the empty space. There was no fear in them now, only curiosity. "Do you know what this place is?" David asked gently. Iri shook her head. "It's where children come to learn something important," he smiled. "What?" she asked in a whisper. David knelt down beside her and looked into her eyes. How to laugh. David had a plan. He believed that Leary didn't need more data, more symbols, or more technology. She needed simple moments, like a child. So he brought her into a world full of small, strange, human things. He showed her a balloon. She stared at it for a long time. Then he let it go, and it floated up into the air, wobbling like a clumsy cloud. I blinked. It's flying. But it has no wings, David laughed. That's the fun of it. It's not supposed to make sense. She watched it rise, her head tilted. For a brief second, her lips curled, just a little, as if her face was learning how to smile. Next, David gave her a plastic bottle of bubbles. Just blow here, he said. Leary hesitated, then slowly blew through the ring. Tiny bubbles flew out, shining, spinning in the sunlight. One popped on her nose. She gasped. Then giggled, very softly, a sound like a bell buried under snow. David's heart jumped. Was that a laugh? He asked. I looked confused. I don't know. It sounded like one, he grinned, from behind a tree. Marine watched silently. Thought she had followed, but stayed hidden. She needed to see if her daughter could really connect with this world. On Villara, laughter was forbidden. Emotion was considered dangerous, too wild to control, but here, watching Leary play with bubbles and chase the balloon, Marine saw something rare. Hope. Later that day, David took Leary to the city square. It was loud, colorful, and full of people. Street musicians played fast music. Children ran around fountains. Laughter echoed off the walls. At first, Leary covered her ears. Too much sound. Too many emotions, but David knelt beside her. Look at their faces, he said. They're not afraid. That noise you hear, it's joy. Leary looked again. Boy fell into a puddle. His mother laughed and hugged him. An old man played a silly tune on a flute. A dog barked at balloons. Chasing them like a hunter, Leary's eyes softened. Then something surprising happened. A clown walked by, red nose, giant shoes, and a squeaky horn. He waved at Leary. She stared, unsure. He made a funny face, crossed his eyes, and honked his horn. And then it happened. Leary laughed. Not a fake sound, not an echo. A real human laugh, soft and shaky, but alive. David froze. Tears came to his eyes. He wasn't the only one. From behind the crowd, Marine stepped forward. Her glowing blue eyes were wet. She dropped to her knees and hugged her daughter. For the first time in weeks, you laughed, she whispered. I heard you, Leary nodded slowly. It felt light. Marine smiled. David stood beside them, his voice shaking. She's learning what it means to feel. But joy does not go unnoticed. High above the clouds, far beyond human sight, a hidden satellite began to glow. It belonged to the Velaran Council, watchers of emotion. They had warned Marine before. If your child bonds too deeply with human feelings, she will never return. Now they had detected laughter, and to them, laughter was danger. That night, back in David's home, Leary sat on the couch with a soft blanket. She looked calm, even sleepy. David gave her a warm cup of cocoa. She sipped it slowly. It tastes like comfort. He smiled. That's the idea. Marine sat quietly by the window, watching the stars. They know, she said softly. David looked at her. Who? My people, she said. They felt her laughter. They will come. David's heart sank. What will they do? I don't know, Marine replied. But they fear what they cannot control. And nothing is harder to control than love. Leary rested her head on the pillow. She whispered, half asleep. Will I forget this? David sat beside her and took her hand. Not if I can help it. Outside the house, the air shimmered. The stars blinked. And somewhere in the dark sky, something had begun to move. The stars were moving, not like normal, not the way they glide across the sky. No. They shifted with purpose. With warning. Marine stood outside David's house, eyes locked on the blinking light in the night sky. They found us, she whispered. Inside, David and Leary sat on the couch, unaware of what was approaching. Leary had changed. In just a few days, she had started to speak more. Her eyes didn't look hollow anymore. They sparkled when she saw something new, a cat, a rainbow, a song, but most of all, she had started to feel Dot, and that was the problem. Marine stepped back into the room. Her face looked calm, but her voice carried a storm. "We don't have much time," she said. David stood up. "What do you mean?" "They're coming, the Velaran Guardians. They've detected the emotional surge. Her laughter, it called them." Leary looked scared. "Will they hurt us?" Marine knelt beside her. "They don't want to hurt you, but they fear what you've become." David frowned. "She's not dangerous. To them, she is," Marine replied. "Our people are born with minds, but not hearts. Long ago, we removed emotion from our code. We believed it made us weak." "But you came here looking for feelings," David said. "Yes, because I believed they were the missing piece. I thought if I brought Leary here, maybe she could feel what we lost." David looked at the girl, now holding her toy rabbit close. "And she did." Marina's voice grew softer. "But Valara has laws, old ones. If a child crosses the line, if she feels too much, she is erased. Reset. They will take her and wipe her memory." Leary gasped. "No," David said firmly. "She's not going anywhere." Marine looked at him. "You don't understand. They don't ask permission." David clenched his fists. "Then we fight." Marine's gaze darkened. "You cannot fight what you don't understand." That night they hid in the forest, deep among trees and rocks. Where Velaran scanners were weaker, David carried Leary in his arms. She was quiet, but awake. Her head rested against his chest. "Your heartbeat," she whispered. "What about?" It's like a drum. It makes me feel safe." David smiled through the fear. "Then listen to it. No matter what happens, remember that sound." Marine walked ahead, her hands glowing faint blue as she carved symbols into the stones, protective shields. "We need time," she said. "I have one chance, one last thing I can try." "What?" David asked. "I want to give her a heart." David stared at her. "What?" "Our people are born with only half the code of life. Emotions were removed long ago. But now I have learned enough, from her, from you, to rebuild it." "But how?" Marine looked tired. "With your help." In the center of the forest clearing, Marine placed the glowing stone on a flat rock. She pressed her fingers into it. The symbols lit up. "This is the heart code," she explained. "An ancient pattern. I will upload it into Leary's core, not her brain but her very essence." David hesitated. "Is it safe?" "It will change her forever. Once the code is complete, she will no longer be Velaran. She will be something new. A being born. Of two worlds." David looked at Leary. She was watching the stars. "She already is." Suddenly, the sky split. A sharp light cracked through the clouds. 3 dark ships appeared. Smooth, silver, and silent. Velaran Guardians. They hovered above the forest like birds made of ice. "They're here," Marine said, standing tall. David held Leary close. A beam of blue light fell from one ship, and 3 figures floated down. Tall, cloaked in white, their faces covered in glass masks. Their voices echoed in David's mind. "You have broken the law of stillness. The child will be returned." Marine stepped forward. "No, she has become more than code. She has found life." "Emotion is infection," the voice answered. "Erase and begin again," Leary screamed and clutched David tightly. "No!" she cried. "I don't want to forget." David shouted. "You can't just erase a child because she feels something." The Guardians moved closer. Marine closed her eyes, raised her hands, and shouted, "Begin the code!" The stone glowed, then burst into golden light. Symbols floated in the air. Spinning around Leary, David placed his hand on the stone. The light wrapped around both of them. Marine whispered an ancient word, soft, like a prayer. "Vareya," meaning life given by love. The light exploded. The Guardians were thrown back. Leary rose into the air, wrapped in energy. Her eyes shined gold and silver. Her voice was clear. "I remember everything, and I choose to feel." The Guardians paused. Then vanished, their law broken by something stronger than fear. Leary floated down. Her feet touched the ground. She smiled, not because someone taught her, But because she wanted to. Marine collapsed, weak but smiling. She has the heart? She whispered. David held Leary close. You did it, he said. No, Leary whispered. We did it. Asterisk, the forest was quiet again. The ships had vanished. The light had faded, but something had changed. Leary stood in the middle of the clearing, calm, glowing softly. Her eyes, once empty, were now filled with emotion. Real ones. Joy, fear, love. Marine sat against a tree, weak, her breath slow. Her energy had been drained from completing the heart code. David knelt beside her. Are you okay? She nodded. I gave part of myself to finish the code. It had to be done. Leary walked over to them. You saved me, she whispered to her mother. Marine smiled. No, my child. You saved yourself. You chose to feel. That makes you stronger than all of us. David placed his hand on Leary's shoulder. They won't come back now, right? Marine didn't answer right away. Her eyes turned to the sky. No, she said softly. They won't send guardians again. David sighed in relief, but, she added, they will come themselves. Far above the earth, in a hidden chamber, on the Velaran moonship, the High Council of Valara gathered 12 minds. One decision, a voice spoke from the shadows. The child has become unstable. Another answered, she has bonded with a human. The virus of emotion has reached full form. She is no longer Velaran. Silence. Then came the final voice. Cold, strong. She must be erased. And the humans must forget she ever existed. Giant sphere began to glow, a memory pulse, capable of erasing feelings from entire regions of space. Countdown, 36 hours. On Earth, Reena's body was failing. The connection to her home planet had weakened her. She looked at David with tired eyes. You must take her far away. Somewhere their signal cannot reach. David stood firm. There must be another way. There is one, she said, voice. Barely a whisper, but it comes with a price. David leaned closer. What is it? Marine reached into her robe and pulled out a small silver seed, glowing with soft blue light. This is a memory anchor. It can protect her feelings, but it must be planted in a heart that's ready to carry them all. David looked at her. You mean, in me? Marine nodded. If they erase the world's memory, you will be the only one who remembers her. You will carry her smile, her laugh, her pain. Leary looked frightened, but he'll be alone. David turned to her, eyes steady. No, he said. As long as I carry you in my heart, I'll never be alone. They moved quickly. Marine guided them to a sacred place hidden deep underground, an old Velaran crystal chamber, long buried under Earth's soil. A place where memories could be hidden, protected. David stood in the center. Marine handed him the silver seed. Once it's placed inside your memory, she said, Leary's emotions will survive. But you will be changed. You will feel everything she has felt, the fear, the joy, the loneliness. David nodded. I'm ready. Leary stepped forward. She held David's hands tightly. Will you still remember me? She asked. David smiled. Every moment, tears filled her eyes, even when I was silent. Especially then, he said. Marine raised her hands. The crystal walls began to glow. The ritual had begun, soft beams of light, wrapped around David and Leary. The silver seed rose between them, then slowly sank into David's chest. A sharp jolt passed through him. He gasped, his eyes filled with memories. Not just images, but feelings. He saw her first steps, her first fear, her first dream, her first laugh. He felt the cold of her world, the silence, the hunger for love. He wept, not from pain, but from understanding. When the light faded, David fell to his knees, but he smiled. She's safe, he whispered. Inside me. Reena's body flickered. She was fading now. Her energy burned away by the ritual. She looked at her daughter one last time. My brave girl, she said. You've become more than I ever imagined. Leary ran to her and hugged her tightly. I love you, she said. And for the first time in her life, Reen cried, not silver tears, but human ones. Then, like starlight vanishing at dawn, Reen disappeared. Gone. 30-6 hours later. The memory pulse was released. Across the planet, people paused, confused, then unaware. The laughter they once heard. The girl they once saw, gone from memory. Even the trees where she played no longer remembered her footsteps. But one man did. David walked the park alone. He carried the silver stone in his pocket. He smiled at the sound of the wind, because somewhere, deep in his heart, a small voice still whispered, warm. The world moved on, just like it always did. Children played in the park again. Laughter echoed from playgrounds. People walked past the bench where a pale, silent girl once sat, but no one remembered her name. Not even her face. She was gone from their minds. Erased by the memory pulse, but not from David. Inside his heart. Her story lived, every moment, every whisper, every smile. He was the last memory of a girl who had come from the stars and learned how to laugh. It had been 6 months since. The pulse. David still returned to the same park every evening. Same bench, same spot. Some days he brought books. Other days he brought toys. Once he left a bubble wand under the old tree. The same kind Leary used to play with. No one understood why he did it, but he wasn't doing it for them. He was doing it for her. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills, David woke from a dream. In the dream, Leary stood by the river, smiling. She wore a yellow dress. Her hair was glowing in the light. She said just one word, home. David sat up. His chest ached, not from pain but from longing. A memory, soft and quiet, brushed against his thoughts. Was she still out there? Later that day, David went into the forest deeper than ever before. His legs were tired, but something pulled him forward. He followed a path of fallen leaves, strange birds, and soft winds. Eventually, he reached a small hill with a single tree standing on top. He had never seen it before. At the base of the tree was a stone. Round, smooth, and silver. It glowed softly, just like her. David picked it up. His heart skipped. A message appeared in the air above the stone. Memory is not just what we keep. Sometimes it's what we give away. Tears filled his eyes. I miss you, he whispered. Then he smiled. But I carry you. The wind blew gently, wrapping around him. Like a soft hug, from that day on, David began to write. Not for the world. Not for fame. But for Leary. He wrote about the silent girl who didn't know what happiness was. He wrote about the alien mother who believed in emotion more than law. And he wrote about love, not the kind found in books or movies, but the kind that chooses to stay, even when the world forgets. One evening, as David was locking the school gates, his old workplace, he heard footsteps behind him. A girl stood there, maybe 8 years old. She had bright brown eyes and a serious face. Are you Mr. David? She asked. He smiled gently. Yes, I am. My name is Liana, she said. My foster mom said you sometimes read stories to kids in the park. David's heart paused. Liana. So close to Leary. He nodded. Yes, I do. Would you like to hear one? She smiled and held out her hand. Only if it's about stars, David chuckled. I think I have just the story. In the park, David opened his notebook. Liana sat beside him, legs crossed, eyes wide. He began, Once a girl came from the stars. She didn't know how to laugh. But a man showed her that sometimes love isn't loud, it's quiet. It lives in smiles and music and silly balloons. And in hearts that never forget, Liana clapped. Was it real? David looked at the sky. Yes, he said softly, more real than most things. That night, as he returned home, the silver stone pulsed again. A new message appeared. Thank you for carrying me. David placed it on his shelf beside a drawing Leary once made, a sun, a stick figure, and a heart. He touched the glass gently. You were never a virus, he whispered. You were the cure. Years passed, the world changed, but David never forgot. He became known in the town as the man who believed in stories. He started a small school, not for math or science, but for feeling, for storytelling, laughter, and learning how to care. Children came from all around, and every student heard about the silent girl who found her voice, not with data, but with love. On the wall of that school was a quote, Feelings are not weakness. They are what make us real. And below it, a name written in glowing silver paint. No one remembered where it came from, but David did, and that was enough. One final evening. Many years later, David sat on the same bench. His hair was white now, his hands slower, but his eyes still carried starlight. A soft wind passed by, a feather floated down and landed in his hand. He smiled, and from deep within his chest, a warm whisper came, not loud, not sharp, but full of life. I remember. Then he closed his eyes, and somewhere among the stars, a girl laughed again. Asterisk.